Hey everybody, welcome back to another video, and as you can see by the title and thumbnail, I'm just going to be showing you guys a simple and quick hair guide on leopard geckos. And if you guys are new to my channel, watching this video for the first time, hello there, my name is Joshua and I make awesome content for our reptiles and amphibians and arachnids. So make sure to watch until the end and enjoy. So leopard geckos, of course, they are really popular reptiles in the reptile hobby, and they are also really simple to take care for. They also make pretty good pets and a lot of people own them. So today we're going to be going through 5 tips on feeding, caring overall, housing, feeding, and like vitamins like calcium, and when to change your tank. So let's go right into it. And guys, for housing leopard geckos can be complicated because depending on the amount of reptiles you have or geckos, I have a male and female, and this is my female here. She's in her own enclosure, and preferably this is probably the best to do, especially if you guys have a pair of geckos. It's best to keep them separate. And a leopard gecko's breeding cycle or breeding season will start from around January and go through September, I think, and it lasts pretty long. And the gecko's breeding season is also one of the longest breeding seasons for most geckos species, and housing would just be the best thing to do. Is that if you guys have 2 females, you guys can actually house 2 females together because they won't be aggressive towards each other. And of course, one thing to keep out is that if you guys have 2 males, this means a bad sign. Never keep 2 males together because of course you guys know what will happen, and this can lead to fighting and even to death, which you guys don't want your geckos to be fighting with each other and end up dying. So that was just one thing to keep in mind. And yeah, so guys, with humidity and like overall temperature would be the ideal temperature for your gecko's enclosure would be 75 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and the temperature could be from like 75%. Of course, it really depends on the substrate you guys have and your tank type and your tank style that you guys have set up. So the perfect temperature would be in Fahrenheit, which would be around 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which is perfect for them. And heating you guys can also use for your guys' enclosure or for your gecko's enclosure would be heat mats. Ideally, that's the best kind of heat source for your geckos to have. And it's probably not best to use a heat lamp because these can actually be bad for your gecko. Like, they can actually get too hot sometimes, and they're also just really bright. So it's best for your leopard gecko to just have natural like daylight that comes in through your window, like natural daylight that you guys can get, and that's overall what you guys need. So a heat mat would be around maybe 8 to 12 watts depending on the enclosure size and everything in it. And feeding is also just pretty simple, as that leopard geckos, they would mainly feed on crickets, roaches, mealworms, waxworms, calciworms, and hornworms. And the main staple diet that you guys would use for your leopard geckos would be crickets and roaches. And the worm types like Mario worms, mealworms, waxworms, and hornworms, those would be more as like treats. So maybe like once or twice a week you guys can give your gecko like 3 mealworms, or maybe like 1 or 2 hornworms. So the staple diet will just consist of crickets and roaches, and of course the calcium you guys should use for your gecko's diet and feedings would be calcium D3, multivitamin, and plain calcium. And the reasons why you guys should really need calcium for your guys' gecko's food is because calcium gives your gecko strong bones, and if your gecko doesn't get calcium D3, this can also lead to metabolic bone disease, which is also in short term MBD, which is a serious disease that your gecko's bones will start to be weakening, and your gecko's spine and bones will start to turn bendy. You guys can search it up, but it doesn't look nice. It's just a gecko that has like bendy bones and it looks really bad. So one thing to look out for is that you guys have calcium D3 most of the time, but throughout the week you guys can also just use the 3 main types. So calcium, that's plain, calcium with D3, and multivitamin calcium, so your gecko gets all over just good nutrients and benefits from your guys' feedings. So if you guys have just recently got a leopard gecko and are still just stuck on the care guide on them, and if you guys should handle your guys' geckos on the first week of getting your reptile, and of course most things online and everyone does that, if you guys get a new reptile, whether if it's a gecko or like a bigger kind of reptile species, it's actually just best to keep them inside the tank or the enclosure you guys got them, then leave them alone for around 1 to 2 weeks after buying your new reptile. Then just feed them oftenly and maybe change the bedding if it's dirty. So just one thing to keep out is if you guys got a new reptile and you're maybe planning on holding them, the best thing to do is just to let them explore and know their enclosure and just keep them by themselves without holding them, because then if you guys hold your geckos often or your reptile after getting them brand new, this can actually stress out your reptile, and stress for your reptile is not good. So another thing I wanted to go you guys through would be breeding. So breeding reptiles and geckos is really popular. Thousands of people do this in reptile hobbies, and guess what? It's not easy. And the reason being is that reptiles and geckos are bred a lot around the world and in the reptile hobby, so breeding is also pretty hard to get customers because it really depends on the morph and overall the gecko's worth and its coloration and morph. So things to look out for in having a high quality gecko would be to make sure your gecko's health is overall good and its lifespan and everything is up to date. Also, things to look out for is the way your gecko, so you guys know your gecko is eating well. And also, if you guys are planning into breeding your guys' leopard geckos or reptiles, especially with leopard geckos, they're pretty reptile. They have a lot of colors and morphs and they're really popular. And if you guys are just looking to breed your reptiles for money, things to look out for is that you guys are going to want to have nice geckos, and this would be meaning that you guys have to spend money, a lot of money, on nice geckos with good morphs and head structure, which is the main thing people look out for, and especially with size. And also some tips to keep out for when breeding your reptile or wanting to get into the reptile hobby is to make sure your geckos are up to weight and that you have permanent male and female leopard geckos. How to check if your gecko's gender is a male or female: just lift up its tail, and males most of the time will have like a bulge, as you can see under their tail, and females like vent area will just be flat. And breeding, make sure your animals get a lot of calcium and protein, and make sure to gut load your insects that you feed to your guys' reptiles, which means that you guys feed your insects before you guys feed into your reptiles, so your reptiles get a lot more nutrients from their food. And overall, make sure to give your geckos calcium regularly, especially with the female, because females, they need their calcium to lay their eggs, so this is also a really big part in breeding. And especially for the female, they have a harder time with having to lay all the eggs. And just make sure your geckos are overall in good health and good condition for breeding, and you guys have a good enough enclosure with them. So I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video on just the overall care guide on leopard geckos and these few tips I shared with you guys. And also guys, comment down below what content you want to see next. I have scorpions, leopard geckos, and chameleon. Any content you guys want to see next, or next video topic you guys want to see, comment down below. Make sure to share my videos with your friends and family, and make sure to subscribe. So I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.